Today's video is brought to you by The Lord of the Rings the card game from Fantasy Flight Games, a cooperative living card game for 1 to 4 players set in J.R.R. Tolkien's world that we know and love. Stick around after the video to find out more about the brand new edition of the core set, perfect for beginning your adventure in Middle-earth. He is known as the Great Smith of the Valar. He's the maker of the Dwarves, and notably, 2 of his Maiar servants would fall to darkness. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the Vala Aule. Aule is among the greatest of the Valar. This is not merely a measure of power, but an actual distinction among the Valar. The Aratar, or the Exalted, are the 8 greatest among the Valar. But we'll go more in depth on the Aratar in an upcoming video on manwe. Among the lords of the Valar, Aule is said to have been the 3rd most powerful, behind only Manwe and Ulmo. Aule governs over the substances of the world, for he is the master of all works and crafts, from small works of skin to the forging of lands and mountains, rocks and gems, minerals and basins of the sea. We are told that Aule's love of devising new things and of being praised is similar to that of Melkor. However, Aule would always be faithful to Eru, whereas Melkor would not. Likewise, Aule was never jealous of others' creations, unlike the Dark Lord. This would lead to a personal strife between the 2 great Valar, for Melkor envied Aule and would ever mar his work, and Aule would ever seek to repair them. In the beginning, Aule, like all of the Valar and Maiar, took part in the Song of the Ainur, which Eru uses to create the universe. During the song, Aule thinks most about the fabric of the earth itself, and during the creation of Arda, Aule would work alongside Manwe and Ulmo, with Aule fashioning the substances which make up Ambar, a term for the inhabited world of Arda. In particular, Aule is heavily involved in the creation of continents and mountains. As we know from the Silmarillion, it is these works, among others, that Melkor would seek to twist, corrupt, or outright destroy. One of Aule's Maiar, whose name was Mairon, is ensnared by his bitter enemy, and would turn to serve the Dark Lord instead. Thus, Mairon becomes known as Sauron. Though Aule did not save his greatest servant, he would help reclaim one of Ulmo's. For Ose, a Maiar of the sea, was also seduced by Melkor. However, Aule went to Uinen, asking her to calm and restrain Ose. Thus Ose returns to Ulmo, and would faithfully serve the Valar alongside Uinen, his wife. And they would become among the most known of the Maiar to the children of Iluvatar. In the early days of the world, Aule fashions the 2 lamps, the first light source for all the lands of Arda. The lamp Iluin is set upon Mount Helkar in the north, with Ormal set in the south. But Melkor would sneak into the lands of Arda and destroy Aule's lamps. In Iluin's fall, the inland sea of Helkar is created where its roots had been, and the fall of Ormal spills flame across the world, also forming the Sea of Ringil. The destruction is so great that the Valar retreat across the sea, building the lands of Valinor, which are now lit by the 2 trees, which were created by Aule's wife, Yavanna. There was yet another of Aule's creations that would come into this tale of the battles with Morgoth, however. Aule had forged a great chain, Angainor, and with the pending awakening of the elves, the Valar would personally move against Morgoth. Melkor is defeated and captured, and bound in Aule's chain. He would be captive in the halls of Mandos for nearly 3,000 years. However, Aule would not be content while awaiting the promised children of Iluvatar with the creation of devices. He wished for children to love and to teach the works of his craft. During this time, when Middle-earth is covered in darkness, it is a period known as the Sleep of Yavanna, where she set everything good to sleep and await the light. The only things that roamed the lands in these times were monsters from Melkor's fortress of Utumno. Thus Aule sets to creating children of his own, who would be hardy, strong, and resistant, able to endure great hardship. However, having only a vague impression of Eru's promised children, Aule's creations are shorter and structured quite differently. Aule's children are the Dwarves. Of them he creates 7, the 7 fathers of the Dwarves. He teaches them a language of his own creation, Kuzdul. Now Iluvatar knew what was done, and in the very hour that Aule's work was complete, and he was pleased, and began to instruct the dwarves in the speech that he had devised for them, Iluvatar spoke to him, and Aule heard his voice and was silent. And the voice of Iluvatar said to him, "Why hast thou done this? Why dost thou attempt a thing which thou knowest is beyond thy power and thy authority?" Iluvatar points out that it is only he who possessed the flame imperishable and could give true life. Thus the dwarves could only move and speak when Aule wished them to do so. If his thought should be elsewhere, they would be motionless and helpless. Aule says this was not his intent, and that he only wished to love and to teach, so that his children may perceive the beauty of creation. "In my impatience I have fallen into folly, yet the making of things is in my heart from my own making by thee. And the children of little understanding that makes a play of the deeds of his father may do so without thought of mockery, but because he is the son of his father. But what shall I do now, so that thou be not angry with me forever? As a child to his father I offer thee these things, the work of the hands which thou hast made. Do with them what thou wilt. But should I not rather destroy the work of my presumption?" Then Aule took up a great hammer to smite the dwarves, and he wept. But Iluvatar had compassion upon Aule and his desire, because of his humility. And the dwarves shrank from the hammer and were afraid, and they bowed down their heads and begged for mercy. And the voice of Iluvatar said to Aule, "Thy offer I accepted even as it was made. Dost thou not see that these things have now a life of their own, and speak with their own voices? Else they would not have flinched from thy blow, nor from any command of thy will." Then Aule cast down his hammer and was glad, and he gave thanks to Iluvatar, saying, "May Eru bless my work and amend it." Eru gives life to the dwarves, but will not allow them to awake before his own children. Thus Aule sets the 7 fathers to sleep beneath the stone across the lands of the world, waiting for their time to awake. And Iluvatar tells him that ever the firstborn, the elves, and the dwarves will be at strife, the children of his creation and the children of his adoption. And the dwarves would indeed take after their creator, delighting in his works and revering Aule, who they called in their tongue Mahal, above all others. After the awakening of the elves and their subsequent travel to Valinor, the Noldor would become students of Aule and learn much of his craft. His greatest pupil would be Feanor, who would use his learned knowledge to craft the Silmarils, which contain light from the 2 trees. However, the 2 trees themselves would also be destroyed by Melkor. He had been given a second chance by his former brethren, and had feigned remorse and repentance before wreaking havoc upon Valinor. With the help of the giant spider-like creature Ungoliant, he destroys the 2 trees and steals the Silmarils, leaving Valinor in darkness. However, thanks to Yavanna and Varda, Lorelin bears one last fruit, and Telperion one last flower, and Aule and his people create 2 great vessels to carry them. The fiery fruit of Lorelin is made into the sun, and the silver flower of Telperion is set as the moon. And the great vessels are set beyond Melkor's reach, to bring light to all of Arda once more. While this would be the last of Aule's great crafts of which we are told, it is not the end of his story. We are also told that much later, after Morgoth's defeat in the War of Wrath and Sauron's rise in Middle-earth, Aule would send another of his Maiar to a meeting. This gathering is made in order to send emissaries to help the free peoples fight back against the second Dark Lord. The Maya is Curunir, and he volunteers to travel to Middle-earth on this mission. becoming the first of the Istari. He would be known in Middle-earth as Saruman the White, and another of Aule's servants would fall. Despite his impatience and his less than stellar record of servants turning to darkness, Aule was indeed great among the Valar. The works of his hands would not only light the world so long as it endured, but his love and hardiness would live on in his greatest creations, the adopted children of Iluvatar. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Listen Me the Cinda, Celebrimbor, The Mighty Mim, Team Weasel, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Toby Mobs Music, CCDC Red Team, Nerd Sidgeman Anytimer, Pelkey Sports Cards, Moki the Brown, Christopher Carbaugh, Joe Tepper, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Salim Rahman, Zetrock, Berto Berg, Grand Strategy Nerd, Graham Darracott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Michael Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.